Hello, welcome to your astrological forecast for the week of Monday, November 13th through Sunday, November 19th, 2023. This week, definitely the main event is the new moon in Scorpio. It will happen at 20 degrees Scorpio. And the main aspect that it will make is, of course, the moon is conjoining the sun. That's what a new moon is. But both the moon and the sun will sort of simultaneously oppose Uranus. So it's kind of channeling in that Uranian energy, that kind of provocative energy, the groundbreaking energy, the energy pushing us to have sudden spurts of growth in terms of our consciousness. That's channeling in all of those types of energies and themes into what is already a pretty provocative and profound new moon, right? A new moon in Scorpio, just like it sounds, it's a new beginning, not in the sense of, it's not the best time for literally physically starting something new. It's more a time for focusing on our intentions. This is kind of a time where the manifestation energy or potential is at its peak, so to speak, because the focus of the moon's energy here is not so much on physical reality. It's more in our minds, in our thoughts, feelings, dreams, imaginations, etc. So you just utilize that. Look to Scorpio. Scorpio is an expert energy at dealing with this type of thing, and focus on your intentions. I always say it's probably always a good idea for us to focus on our intentions, especially you empaths out there. If you're listening to this, there's a pretty good chance that you are an empath and you may struggle with boundaries and focusing on your own intentions and desires. So I always say, I always preach really that it's really great to focus on our intentions all the time, but especially on a new moon, okay? And this week I want to practice what I preach, so to speak. So I'm going to set some intentions for this forecast for you, okay? I've never really done this out loud before, but obviously I want to give you a damn good forecast, right? I want to give you some information that will be accurate for you, maybe useful or kind of thought inducing, get those gears stirring, so to speak. And I'd like to provide some confirmation for you. I'd like to make sense of it all. Yes, this world seems random and chaotic, but astrology, among other things, helps us realize that there is this kind of beautiful design to it all. And I think by understanding these cycles and these themes, making sense of it all, it makes us feel more stable and at peace in what would otherwise be a chaotic and random world. So I want to do that for you. And then last thing I want to say is I'd like to be concise. This is something that I struggle with. I can sometimes ramble a little bit. So I'd like to give you this information in the most efficient way that I can at this time. All right. And honestly, let's get into it, okay? But before we get into the day-by-day forecast, I did want to mention the readings. Most of you are aware I'm still doing readings right now, and most of my readings are for the rate of $40 U.S. currency, U.S. dollars. So I don't think you're going to beat this level of quality reading anywhere else. So if you like a reading, hit me up. It's a lot of fun, and it helps support the channel. Otherwise, anything you can do to support the channel, I really appreciate. If you want to like the video or subscribe for more content, I really appreciate all of that support. Okay, but with all that out of the way, let's get into the day-by-day forecast here. So we start out Monday, November 13th with the main event right off the bat. No beating around the bush this week. We've got that big event of the new moon happening on Monday. Not only that, but Eastern Standard Time, it happens very early. This is the chart for the new moon. It technically happens right around 4:26, 4:27 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Of course, the exact time doesn't really matter, though. This is something that we are really going to experience all day Monday, as well as all day the previous day, Sunday, November 12th as well. I already talked about that in the last forecast, so I'm not going to dive into that. But yes, so Monday, November 13th. On the one hand, a new moon is generally the least active part of the lunar cycle, right? At least from a physical standpoint, because again, the focus is more on our subconscious, on our dreams, our intentions, etc. It's the time for manifesting, from the ether, so to speak, from God or from heaven, from, whatever you believe in, from whatever the non-physical realms, okay? That's generally more so where the focus is. So again, what are your intentions? What do you want? If you would like some specificity to this sort of assignment, look to where Scorpio, specifically 20 degree Scorpio, look to where that point falls in your chart, because that's where there's this potential for a new manifestation, a new intention, a new direction in your life. Okay, so is it in your 10th house? it's going to be a new beginning related to career and your reputation, etc.? Is it in your first house that has to do with yourself, your image, your expression, etc., etc.? Okay, but for us in general, Scorpio tends to deal with issues surrounding intimacy, as well as commitments, obligations, and investments. So a lot of heavy stuff. Scorpio is definitely an intense and heavy energy. That's probably its key trait, so to speak. It's emotionally intense. So yes, we may have this kind of intensity going on. It's definitely riling us up, but in a kind of non-physical way. So something is kind of stirring within us at this time. This is especially true because we are involving the two most radical and volatile planets into this new moon. And this kind of continues a whole theme that we've already established to some extent. A new moon in Scorpio would already be kind of riling us up, maybe in a quiet way or a subtle way, but it's still kind of stirring the pot. It's, provoking us to take action. But we're involving two main planets into this new moon. Mars is pretty tightly conjunct this new moon. The new moon, again, is at 20 degrees Scorpio, and Mars is at 22 degrees Scorpio. So Mars is basically conjunct the new moon. Its energies are very much right there, very channeling into that new moon. I'm sorry, I still have a cough. It's gradually getting better, so I do apologize for that. But Mars is conjunct the new moon, and Uranus is opposing the new moon. So remember, Mars is the energy of ambition. It's a very energetic energy, right? It's our drive. It's how we fight. It's what we fight for. It can be very sexual in nature, but also very ambitious. So that is the energy that is right there. It is one and the same. It's conjunct this new moon. And the new moon is in Scorpio, which is ruled by Mars. So this is a very Mars-focused, Mars-influenced new moon. So we may be more competitive, more kind of angsty, maybe more irritable, but also more inspired or more driven to take action, to have some kind of new ambition, things like that. So if you have been a little bit complacent or kind of lacking direction, this could be exactly what's in the cards for you. This could be exactly what's needed. Okay. Not only do we have all that going on, but also with that Uranian, Uranus opposing the new moon, or I guess technically the new moon is opposing Uranus. So that's also channeling in the Uranian energy, channeling in that really weird, abstract, obscure, energy. Uranus is a destabilizer, so to speak. It's the energy of earthquakes. It is also kind of provoking us, stirring the pot. It may bring to us sudden revelations. And this is not always, these revelations are not always welcomed, because they may come to you in areas that you were not seeking further clarity or further consciousness. Okay, so in other words, there may be a part of your life that you weren't really thinking about, you weren't really intending to learn about or change, but then an aspect like this comes along and suddenly you have a realization, wow, I didn't realize my life was like this. Your standards may change, your desires may change, your very understanding of your own reality may change dramatically. You may come across some huge new information or a new feeling, and it just comes out of nowhere. Again, this is something that you may have not intended it. You may have not desired this because it was something that was off of your radar before. Okay, so that's about as specific as I can get. With Uranus, you can really expect the unexpected, so to speak. So of course it will hit us in different ways depending on our own astrology. But that is basically the collective theme for this new moon. So it's a very unpredictable energy. But I want to stress again, it's in the ether, it's in our thoughts and our feelings. So something very obscure, something very new is kind of coming in, it's channeling in. And I also wanted to mention too, as we are going into this week, we're kind of in a void, so to speak, not only because of that new moon. The moon's energy is kind of transient, it's abstract, it's difficult to connect with on a new moon. It's subconscious, spiritual, etc. Not only do we have that whole kind of theme going on, but also we have left eclipse season. This new moon, in my mind, marks the official closing of the eclipse season. We are no longer dealing with that level of intensity anymore. So really now we're kind of entering this void, this new beginning. A void is excellent at, it's a vacuum. So it's like kind of sucking in something new, so to speak. New things can really blossom in a void, if that makes sense, when you have that kind of emptiness there. So that is generally the energy that we are going into. I should have kind of started with that, I think. But That's where we're going into. So, in a way, it may almost be unsettling having that sudden lack of intensity, but at the same time, it may be refreshing. We are definitely moving into a new phase, a new cycle, a new level, so to speak. Okay, very intense stuff. It's weird at the beginning of the week because it's so subdued, but so intense at the same time. Moving to Tuesday, November 14th, Moon is now in Sagittarius. Moon actually enters Sagittarius kind of late on Monday. So that is definitely a shift to the energy. So in other words, Tuesday will be a little bit lighter, a little bit more optimistic, definitely not as intense because now we have moved away from, the moon is no longer conjunct Mars and opposing Uranus and, all those things I said for Monday. We don't really have those for Tuesday. So it's a bit more of a stable energy and definitely more light-hearted. We have Moon in Sagittarius as well as Mercury for that matter. And Moon will actually cross over Mercury. We'll talk about what that means. But first of all, having Moon and Mercury in Sagittarius means that although we are in Scorpio season still, we're starting to get closer to Sagittarius season. Moon and Mercury are already there, so they're already bringing in that fun kind of, holiday vibes. It's festive, it's celebratory. Sagittarius just wants to have fun and kind of adventure around and experiment. So, we still do have this heavy intensity and the emotion of Sun and Mars in Scorpio, but then we've also got a little bit of that lighthearted energy of Sagittarius as well. So it's kind of a nice balance, actually. Specifically for Tuesday with the moon crossing over Mercury, that's channeling in Mercury's energy into all of our kind of focus, into our experience, all right? So in other words, we need to talk about kind of the state of Mercury. Mercury is in detriment in Sagittarius right now. So this means that we're very open to ideas that we may not typically be open to, different ways of thinking, different belief systems, different paradigms, different approaches to life, different lifestyles. All of that we may be somewhat more open to. On the other hand, though, this is kind of an unsettling energy. We may feel somewhat out of our bodies, so to speak, a bit alien, a bit foreign. We may come across information that is strange or, unusual. We may be thinking or communicating in ways that are strange or unusual. So there's different pros and cons to that. It is an unsettled energy, but it's also excellent at getting us thinking outside the box, trying something new, etc. So the reason why I talk about all of that is a consistent energy with Mercury and Sagittarius, but it's coming much more to the forefront on Tuesday as the moon crosses over Mercury. All right. Okay, and then going right along to Wednesday, November 15th, moon continues through Sagittarius. It's no longer near Mercury, so we're not so much hyper fixated on this very intellectual energy. There may have been a lot of chatting, thinking, learning on Tuesday. That has dissipated to some extent on Wednesday. We're a little bit more carefree, not so much overthinking everything to the extent that we were on Tuesday. So I think Wednesday is kind of continuing this phase, this trend of sort of lightening things up a little bit. Also at this time, moon is very gradually starting to gain light. So as the moon gains light over the following days, it's very there's a clear metaphor or analogy behind it. As the moon gains light, the more light it gains, the more it shows that we are kind of physically or actively stepping into this new lunar cycle. So there are new developments, new things occurring as the moon gains light. So we're starting to see that now as the moon is, kind of a waxing crescent at this point, I believe. So that can be kind of inspiring and exciting. And that's also, again, why it's so important to know your intentions, to know your intentions around the new moon, but even right now as well as we start to have those new developments coming into our world. Wednesday, we do have one aspect that would be Mercury sextiling Venus. And this is really beautiful. Sorry, that was not beautiful, but Mercury sextiling Venus is a really beautiful, fun type of aspect. And it's kind of weird considering what signs they're in. So Venus is in Libra. Venus is in a very kind of privileged position. She's in domicile. She's in her home in Libra. So she's showing that we're really enjoying conversations, interactions with others, learning new information and being sociable, all that kind of good stuff, that air energy, Libra energy. And it's also a very pleasure-focused type of energy, right? And then again, with Mercury and Sagittarius, I kind of outlined that, we are thinking outside the box, philosophical, etc. So as these two energies have this connection, this sextile, they're very much in harmony. They're agreeing with each other, and there's this kind of beautiful balance that comes from both of them. Mercury Venus aspects are really great for social interactions, especially this one. We're mixing fire with air, and these elements blend together so beautifully. Mercury and Sagittarius may promote us in being a little bit passionate with our communication, and very much excited about this idea or this other new idea, different philosophies, and wanting to talk to people who have maybe different ideas, different opinions, different backgrounds, right? So we're mixing that with Venus and Libra, which is already setting up this, the desire is in speaking with other people, having engaging conversations. So combining both of these gives you a really, really good shot at learning something new in a really pleasurable way. Speaking with, maybe someone who has a different background than you, but they are so maybe charismatic, or you're just enjoying talking to them and learning something new. That's kind of the energy that I would see here. I also definitely characterize Mercury Venus aspects like this as good kind of party energy, like a good something maybe kind of fancy, like a nice dinner party or something, where you're having engaging conversation and having fun, learning something new, etc. So really beautiful aspect there. Going to Thursday, November 16th, we do have a major shift very early in the day. It's actually right around midnight on Wednesday night. So depending on your time zone, Moon may enter Capricorn either very late Wednesday or very early Thursday. But Eastern Standard Time, we basically have the Moon in Capricorn all day on Thursday the 16th. So this is a huge shift. I recently talked about, when planets leave Leo and enter Virgo. This is a little bit similar. When planets, or in this case, the Moon leaves Sagittarius and enters Capricorn, it's a bit of a rude awakening. It's a wake-up call. I think this is one of the most difficult ingressions that we can have, because we've moved from the Moon in Sagittarius, which, again, it's holiday energy. It's celebratory. It's, pushing us to have fun, don't worry about anything too much. Let's just have a good time, eat, drink, and be merry. That was the energy we had for the last two to 3 days. But now as the Moon enters Capricorn, that completely changes. Like, the whole party kind of gets shut down, so to speak, as the Moon enters Capricorn. It is kind of a buzzkill, but it can also be very important. It is difficult. Moon is in detriment in Capricorn. And I do want to note really quickly, we have this interesting mix of multiple inner planets in domicile, but also in detriment. Moon and Mercury are both in detriment in Capricorn and Sagittarius, respectively. Mars and Venus, the planets of pleasure and desire, are in domicile, so they're in really strong positions in Scorpio and Libra, respectively. So we have kind of a weird mix of, in some ways, we're very much feeling ourselves and feeling naturally very strong, and in other ways we're feeling kind of the opposite. We're sort of out of our bodies. Things are strange, unusual, unique at this time. So it's a really weird mix of feeling at ease, but also kind of not at the same time. So yeah, just wanted to note that. But specifically with the Moon entering Capricorn, it is in detriment. So it's showing that emotionally there's something kind of off kilter. We may feel a little bit restless. This restlessness, though, is key. There is value here because it's pushing us to make change. In other words, Moon in Capricorn is not the most comfortable energy, but if everything was comfortable, you would never improve. Nothing would get better, right? I mean, I guess it wouldn't need to, because it would be comfortable, but there would be no change. There would be no excitement, right? So with Moon in Capricorn, yes, we may feel a little unsettled, a little restless, but that can push us to be more ambitious, to be more goal-focused, goal-oriented, thinking about the long term. How can I improve my situation in some kind of way? What do I want for the future, etc.? These are the questions that kind of come to us with Moon in Capricorn. Last thing about this, I do want to mention that Moon is very gradually approaching a sextile aspect with the Sun. It's definitely not there yet on Thursday, but the Moon is at least sextiling the Sun by sign. So in other words, Moon is in Capricorn, Sun is in Scorpio. These signs blend together very well. They're both energies that are supporting us in being ambitious and kind of independent. Sun is in Scorpio, which is more supporting us in that emotional instinct and intuition. And then Moon in Capricorn is there to provide some kind of stoic pragmaticism. So combining both of these energies can be very powerful as well as harmonious. So again, it's kind of a weird mix of being unsettled and being a bit restless. Like something is wrong, we want to fix things, we want to work on things, but at the same time there is this kind of harmony there. That's the best way I can put it. All right, Friday, November 17th, there is a really interesting aspect we need to talk about. First, I just want to note that Moon is still in Capricorn, and it's now approaching that sextile aspect with the Sun. It's not quite there yet. It will be very close as we close out Friday night going into early Saturday morning. So we're getting to that sextile aspect that, on the one hand, this is a weird one. So on the one hand, Moon sextiling the Sun is typically very harmonious. It's a general collective good mood, so to speak. But at the same time, again, remember that Moon is in detriment in Capricorn, so we're kind of emotionally unsettled. And then Sun in Scorpio is not technically in detriment, but I think Sun in Scorpio is sort of an unsettling energy as well. Sometimes it can be fun. It can be, it's kind of creepy vibes, so to speak, which can be fun. But at the same time, it's very off kilter. So with this sort of dynamic, again, it's this weird mix of being off kilter. Something is wrong. I need to fix something. I need to work on something. But at the same time, there's kind of a beauty in that. There's a beauty in what's wrong right now. Kind of a weird mix. Okay, but there's one aspect we need to talk about. So depending on how you look at it, it's either one aspect or three. So basically, the way I'm going to approach this, Sun is conjunct Mars today, and both of them are trining Neptune. So Sun will conjoin Mars at 25 degrees Scorpio. They're both trining Neptune, which is at 24 degrees Pisces. Okay, so what does this mean? So typically, how do I put this? Let's focus first on Sun conjunct Mars, and then we'll talk about the trine to Neptune. Sun conjunct Mars in Scorpio means that we're channeling in a lot of Martian energy right now. Sun is in Scorpio, which is ruled by Mars. Well, they're both in Scorpio, so they're both ruled by Mars. Mars is in a very strong state right now, and then plus it's conjunct the Sun. So channeling in that Mars energy, again, it's that energy of drive, ambition, competitiveness, restlessness, sexuality. Mars energy is like cool energy, so to speak. Like someone who has a lot of Mars energy looks cool. They look badass. Like they look like a winner, because Mars has everything to do with getting what you want, knowing how to get it, getting what you want, no matter what the situation is, and being a winner, coming out on top, basically. It's a very dominance type of energy, right? So with Sun conjunct Mars in Scorpio, we are all behaving a little bit more like that. Depending on how you look at it, I think I always describe Mars as a double-edged sword. On the one hand, yeah, that can be really cool, especially for those of us that may lack Mars energy, those of us that aren't always ambitious or don't always know what we want. We can utilize this to have a little bit more drive, a little bit more ambition, right? A little bit more inspiration to, be a little bit self-centered. Go out after what you want, get what you want, right? That could be very powerful. On the other hand, this can be very divisive. It is a self-centered energy, so it's supporting us in being more independent, not really working together. If anything, we're all kind of competing with each other a little bit more. So this can be divisive. It can even be destructive to some extent, but it can also be very constructive. Mars, a good representation for Mars energy would be a hammer. I like thinking of it as a hammer because you can use a hammer to build something, right? You could build a house using a hammer, among other tools, presumably. But you can also use a hammer to destroy something. You can use it as a weapon. You could kill someone with a hammer, right? In a very brutal type of way. So that is kind of the energy here. You can use this to build something new, something pretty cool, or you can use it to destroy your enemies, okay? Okay, and then this gets even more interesting when we add in that trine to Neptune. So it's channeling in that Neptunian energy, which honestly is really weird for this kind of aspect. When you combine Mars energy with Neptune energy, things get really weird because on the one hand, I've already described how we are more restless, more driven, we're more inclined to take action. But at the same time, Neptune energy is like, it puts this fog over everything. It makes things kind of confusing. We may be a little bit delusional. We may have delusions of grandeur. So that could be really powerful in going after a task even though it seems like it can't be accomplished. We may have that larger than life kind of inspiration and drive. So that could actually be really powerful. But on the other hand, we may just be completely delusional. Maybe what we're going after doesn't actually exist. Maybe we are going after things that aren't truly in our best interest. It can be hard to have that kind of clarity when we're bringing in this Neptunian energy. It is a trine, so that would generally suggest that this is a harmonious energy. So in other words, being ambitious for ideals, for feelings, I want to set a new goal spiritually. I want to set a new goal that benefits the collective or whatever. I could definitely see this kind of, I almost said utopian, but that's not necessarily what I'm after. Like this kind of driven mentality takes on this spiritual sort of essence, if that makes sense. I could see this happening in a very ideal type of way. But again, although it is a trine, it's still Neptune we're talking about. Neptune makes things confusing. It keeps us, it makes us more, what's the word? More subjective. This is a very subjective type of energy. So each of us is going to be going after what we want, which is very dependent on our own perceptions, which may or may not actually coincide with objective reality. Does that make sense? So, again, that can be very powerful, but it can also be, we may be paranoid at this time. We may be thinking that our situation is much better or much worse than it actually is, or what we're going after may be better or worse than what, the whole perception could be completely off right now. So I don't want to talk about that too much, but it is a really weird one. My only advice would be to just, do your best to be grounded, maybe think things through. It may be very easy to get caught up in emotion today and to take some kind of dramatic action, without seeing things clearly. So maybe just like kind of check in with yourself on Friday the 17th. Is what I'm doing truly for the benefit of myself or for others? Just simple questions like that. Think things through. Don't let, maybe don't completely act in the heat of the moment. That would be my only advice. You may have some true inspiration that will truly help you. So go after that. Use that. I'm not saying to be scared of that. I'm just saying to do a double check to make sure what you're doing actually makes sense. Okay, November 18th, Saturday. Moon continues through Capricorn. It will enter Aquarius kind of early in the day, Eastern Standard Time in the morning. So this changes the focus. Definitely change. I'm sorry. So on the one hand, Moon in Aquarius is still kind of an obscure, kind of weird energy, right? Moon represents how we're doing emotionally, the emotional focus. And with Moon in Aquarius, we aren't really emotional. We're kind of detached from our emotions. We may not really know how we're feeling. And this is especially weird when you consider Sun is still in Scorpio. So we're still in generally what would typically be an emotionally intense time. But at the same time, it's kind of like for this moment, for the next 2.5 days or so, we kind of detach from our feeling. That, of course, has pros and cons. It may be harder to connect with our own feelings. So that can be kind of debilitating in some kind of way. It can be unsettling, but at the same time, it can also help us be more aware of other factors and variables. How are other people doing? How, what are the thoughts of other people? How are my actions affecting, the long term, affecting society, things like that. Aquarius likes to think holistically, think about the whole system, the whole situation. So with Moon in Aquarius, we can definitely be more fixated on things like that. And what else there? I have a couple notes I want to cover. So I think that's really the main thing that I have, actually. Moon is not really close to any aspects. We don't have any technical aspects today. So the main thing is just shifting to Moon in Aquarius. Also, let's take into account the aspect that Moon makes with the Sun. It's not technically making an aspect today, but it is leaving that sextile that it was making previously and getting closer to a square aspect. It's getting closer to that first quarter moon. So in other words, the harmonious type of dynamic that we had over the last couple of days is now dissipating, and things are starting to become a little bit more intense, a little bit more action oriented, a little bit more pressurized. This is because Aquarius and Scorpio are essentially incompatible, right? They square each other if this is a contentious aspect. They're both supporting us in being very individualistic and a bit counterculture, a bit obscure and weird, but they're both doing so in different ways. Again, Sun in Scorpio is very emotionally intense. Moon in Aquarius is very detached. So there's this friction that is kind of building very gradually, and it's increasingly going to push us to take some kind of action or start something new. All right, lastly for Sunday, November 19th, early in the day, there's this really beautiful, interesting aspect where Mercury is still within orb of that sextile to Venus. We talked about that earlier this week. So really, in a way, it kind of carries on throughout the whole week. That really beautiful energy of, conversations and learning something new, yada, yada, yada. So that's still pretty much in effect for Sunday. And the reason why I'm talking about it specifically for Sunday is because early in the day, Moon will be at 13 degrees Aquarius, and it will sextile Mercury, which is Moon sextiles Mercury. Mercury's still sextiling Venus, and then Moon simultaneously trines Venus. So it's kind of like this double sextile, one trine. I'm sure there's a name for this. If you know the name for this, please leave it in the comments. I should have looked it up. I didn't think of that before. I'm not so good with these like 3-4 point aspects because they are very rare. But yeah, it is beautiful though. This is so harmonious. 2 sextiles and a trine. These are the harmonious aspects. We already talked about Mercury sextiling Venus, beautiful conversations, learning something new. But with Moon sextiling Mercury, this is kind of bringing in some more kind of provocative energy, and it's another factor that's supporting us in learning something new or having some kind of new conversation, sort of exposing ourselves to completely new information or new different kinds of people or lifestyles, etc. And then the trine between Moon and Venus is really supporting kind of the social element of this. So, let's talk to new people, let's have interesting conversations, all of that good stuff. So together, this really looks like great party energy. It looks great for having fun, talking to someone new. This will be the most strong, again, very early on Sunday. So this will gradually dissipate throughout the day. Lunar aspects are very brief, right? But I did want to mention that because I thought it looked really beautiful and really interesting as well. And then later in the day, that the dynamic changes because, again, the moon is approaching that square aspect. So the moon will leave that whole double sextile with a trine situation. And rather than that being the main focus will become increasingly moon approaching that square to the sun. We won't get that first quarter moon quite yet. It will actually happen on November 20th, so on Monday. But we're getting there. We're starting to feel that pressure building up, that intensity, maybe that stress or anxiety. But I always say it doesn't have to be stress or anxiety. It's just that we're entering a time that's supporting us in taking action, doing something new. So in other words, Sunday evening especially, maybe take some kind of action, do something new, right? That's what first quarter moons are all about. And this will peak on Monday. So we'll talk about that in next week's forecast. Okay, so kind of an interesting week. It really never ends. Like, every week we've got some kind of new development, something new going on. So it's continuously exciting, never a dull moment, right? Next week we've got that first quarter moon that I was talking about in Aquarius. That's going to be a really weird one. Sun in Scorpio with moon in Aquarius squaring the sun. So really weird one, right? Scorpio and Aquarius are both weirdo signs. They're both supporting us all in being weirdos and embracing our inner individuality, right? Our eccentricities and things like that. And also both Aquarius and Scorpio are all about evolution. So we may learn something new, take some kind of new action, etc. We'll talk more about that in the next week's forecast. Also some major developments next week. Sun and Mars both enter Sagittarius. So I'm definitely excited to talk about it with you next week. I hope this forecast was good for you or entertaining or informational. And I look forward to talking to you next week. Take care.